For a lot of people, this is a problem that should be solved through regulation and proper public funding. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen, and we're seeing that if we just wait for that to occur, basically the biodiversity decline, the climate crisis is just going to continue. So you wouldn't be surprised to hear that, as those of you who've read the Financing Nature Recovery report would know, that really it comes down to three things from my point of view, and that is the markets need to be well designed, bringing together the economic, the environmental and the legal principles to avoid unintended consequences. Secondly, needs to be effective governance, and that comes down, in my mind, to independent oversight and assurance, and in particular the monitoring to ensure genuine, lasting and additional environmental improvement. And then down to operation, the transparency, the simplicity, but the fairness between buyers and suppliers. Do you know whether or not the market operator is actually taking most of the profit from the trade? Or are they actually sharing that back between the buyers and the suppliers? Do you know what the fees are? Are they transparent? And so I think it also comes down to transparency.
That's helpful. Thank you very much. Karen, you
I think
add a little?
Just one or two small things to add, because, I mean, goodness me, the content this morning already has been absolutely astounding. So thank you to all the speakers so far. I'm a lawyer, sorry about that. But it's just been amazing to be involved in this catchment market and to have come so far. And there is such a lot of potential, which is just fantastic. But as a lawyer, we speak to developers. They need high integrity, because when they maybe look to sell on their development, there is a 30-year obligation to provide credits. We've talked about that a lot, and it is one of the problems and things that we need to work around with this market. So they need to be able to go to a potential buyer to say, look, we delivered these units, 5 years ago, whatever. You now have to make sure that those continue to be maintained. That planning obligation to deliver biodiversity units has got a 30-year lead time. And so it's very likely that most of our developer clients would have some of that 30-year period left. So high integrity is crucial for that, because that incoming buyer will do a lot of due diligence. It's a new area. They're going to be very nervous. And so if we can say, if that developer or us on their behalf can say, look, they bought it from this catchment market, this is all the documentation you need, LPA approved, all that kind of stuff, that's going to be a fantastic thing, but it needs to stand the test of time. Not only incoming buyers, but also potentially investors. Obviously, a lot of developer clients are going to be getting external funding. So those investors will also be crawling all over this stuff. So that's another reason that high integrity is absolutely crucial. I think, and then I guess, the importance generally of a legally robust contractual framework, which can be relied on if things do go wrong. That's it. Obviously, you can't be high integrity without the kind of underlying contracts. We've heard about that before. But I think also, we've talked about collaboration today already, and collaboration is so key, working with the team on the contractual framework for the BACM. There was, NFU came along, actually, we took all their comments on board, and we talked them through how it was all going to work. Collaboration is key. This is new. Everyone is learning. We're all here learning today. So we can't say, look, this is the contractual framework. Sorry, that's it. No negotiation. So I think being flexible, being open to change. Let's face it, BNG looks like what it does today. Next year, it's probably going to be a bit different. So I think it's being open to those ongoing conversations as well.
Very good. Guy.
Very briefly, because you've already heard enough from me on market integrity, I was just going to reinforce the point that when we set out to demonstrate the catchment markets, we explicitly and consciously set out on a strategy to influence nationally and demonstrate locally. And if you go to the UK Financing Nature Recovery report, for those of you who haven't read it, I do commend it. That vision of a well-operated, well-designed, well-governed market is what we have sought to demonstrate in this catchment market context, but the requirement for the equivalent infrastructure, regulation and governance at a national level is really what we need to see in place for this market to scale.
Absolutely. Thank you. Let's move on to standards. I think Rachel made the point very eloquently earlier, but the BSI has released the draft standard last week, an overarching standard for nature markets. And I suppose thoughts on that standard fleetingly might be interesting, but also, are a set of nature market standards going to be sufficient? And if not, what else is required? And Shall I start with you?
Well, I was going to suggest possibly, I'd be interested in Susan's view as
Susan.
a member of the steering group that oversaw the standard. Is that fair to chuck it at you, Susan?
Very good. Sorry, I didn't realise that quiver to your bow.
So as far as the standards are concerned, I think it's a real positive step forward. If the principles that have come out for consultation are broadly really good, and I think they take the conversation and the language, they sort out a lot of the language issues that have been having as well. So if nothing else, that's a good thing, but also the principles are really, really sturdy. I don't think it is enough on its own. I think, as was said in the previous session, accreditation has got to be part of that so that people are sure that the standards that they're going into for their market are robust. We'd also like to see rules on stacking and bundling and blended finance clearer, because that is a real stumbling block at the moment. I've also mentioned about the buyer integrity as well, so that reciprocal screening. So it's great that that's part of the catchment market here. We also need a single register of offset and compensatory projects, because that is a real concern for to ensure avoidance of double counting and problems there. And then for landowners and managers, it was mentioned earlier as well, some sort of standardised and cost-effective process for measurement and monitoring, because that's one of the stumbling blocks at the moment as well.
That's a good list, Susan. Who else would like to contribute to that? David.
I'll probably go second because I'm also involved in that standard on the expert advisory group. There's a steering group and the expert advisory group. Look, it's a good start. I hesitated to say good start. I was going to say it's a start, but I think it is a good start. And it does outline the principles. But I have to echo Rachel Williams' point earlier. What we need is a universal set of ways of quantifying and measuring the biodiversity and ecosystem services from a range of nature-based activities, and they need to be standardised across the country, and we need to all lock in and get behind them.